I was in Tibet, about 3 years ago, before COVID, and
Yes, Pastor.
they told me at that time I was like over 70, but before my sickness, maybe I looked quite young, and they could not believe I am 70. They said in Tibet, when you're 70, you are already very, very old and can hardly do anything and move and so on. And I'm still climbing mountains. They thought I was joking. Because in this high altitude, with little oxygen, the people don't live so long.
Oh,
That is a general rule. Yes, it's uh, because not enough of oxygen. No? Even Lhasa is above 3,000 meters, and most of the places are around 4,000.
so at that time you went to China first.
Yeah, I went to China many times, but now in my time when I was living in Taiwan, the going to China was much easier. Now,
Okay.
when I was in Tibet, so you see almost every bridge, every 20, 30 kilometers, you have some control. You have to show your passport, and you cannot go alone. You have to go with a guide, and with a group. In my time, in the 90s, you could go alone also. And so now the things are changing. In China, it's the control, population control is much tougher than before.
Pastor, about the text,
So
do you have you ever read the Dan Lotto's translation? Dan Lotto's and Friends translation?
a Lotus Sutra, you mean?
No, no, no. The text of Awakening of Faith in Mahayana, translate
But
translated
in
by
French
Dan.
translation,
No, no,
I have not read.
it is
I have
English,
not
Pastor.
read. I don't. Oh, I see. I only know the translation by the Japanese scholar. It's not bad, but he does not give any commentary, nothing. So
Oh, okay,
all
okay.
you can do is to rely on. But it is a good translation. Yeah, it is a good translation, and but without comments. And some of the words I would not translate the same way, but
Yeah.
no doubt he's a very competent. I know him actually. I met him in Taiwan. He
Oh, okay.
goes to these conferences, Fakushan also. He's a very good scholar, and he wrote some other books also.
We can find
Let me.
in internet the other version translated by Dan Lautos. He is the Yogacara expert, I guess. But the translation is quite different if compared with the Japanese.
Uh-huh. Well, because the text is kind of very condensed, and it is possible to, uh, as you know, in classical Chinese, it's possible always to make different translations because Chinese is very abstract language, as opposed to like European languages, which are flat. You have to have case and you have to have conjugation and all this. This you don't have in Chinese, so you can make the link actually in very many different ways. Yes.
Dan, kita start ya, Dan. Mau direkam?
Oke Pak, ini sudah oke, sudah langsung rekam, nanti tinggal di cut atau potong yang bagian ini. Sudah langsung Pak,
Okay,
silakan.
okay,
Sudah oke Pak. Mm-mm.
okay, Fase. If
Mm-mm.
you would like to start now.
So we finished, if I'm right, on these different kinds of jue, huh? Shi jue, pen jue, and jiu jin jue. Huh? So that means you have the what we may call pen jue, we may translate as the original awakening. Everybody has the Buddha nature, or Tathagata Garbha. When you practice, so that is called the initial awakening in the sense that we will learn, you are in the process of awakening and you coming back to the beginning. Now we are going to study the process of going back to the beginning. So as opposed to the Buddha, who is in the beginning, and beginning is being one with the essence, with the Dharmakaya, with the Dharmata, the things as they really are, with the general, with the suchness, with emptiness. So that means he is free from thinking. In this tradition, it does not mean that thinking is something wrong. It is quite natural to think. But in the case of Buddha, the thinking is very different from what we believe to be thinking. He does not need to pay attention to any object. He does not need to investigate any object. He does not need vitarka, vichara, the sustained attention, or uh, the applied attention. All these things are not there in case of the Buddha, but in our case, we necessarily need them in order to understand things. So we are relied on differentiating. We cannot avoid differentiating, but we can avoid, certainly, if we practice well, we can avoid clinging to differentiation. So the thought ideal of the Mahayana practice is as explained in for example, Daimon Sutra. Wu So Ju Shen Qi Xin. Give rise to thinking, to mind, without letting it dwell anywhere. This is the essence of the Mahayana practice, of the non-dualistic approach to practice. So we have explained, as you know, I have been a student of Abhidharma for a long, long time. The Theravada Abhidharma, and I used to study Abhidharma Kosha, Abhidharma Samuchaya, and used to teach it and also used to translate. But this Abhidharma is based on correct differentiation. And this correct differentiation, of course, is very important. But now is the advantage of Chittamatrata, our thinking depends on how we work with our concepts. That's why if we work in a different way with our concepts, we also see things in a different way. This is very important to understand. So, for example, in Theravada, you have 28 kinds of rupa, of form. Some are objects of Vipassana, some are just for practical purpose of differentiation. And you have 52 mental factors, 25 positive and so on. We don't need to go into that. Now, in Sarvastivada, you have 47 mental factors. In Vijnanavada, you have 51 mental factors. Does it mean that one system is right, the other is wrong? No, it does not mean at all. It just means that you put the concepts into your mind in a different way. And then what we actually see, this is very important, is not the reality, it is our arrangement of the reality. This arrangement of reality is called vikalpa. Sanskrit root is kalp, which means to arrange, to fabricate also. And vi means differentiate. So when we differentiate normally, this is a difference, so according to Asanga, between the Mahayana and the early Abhidharma or Theravada Abhidharma or Sarvastivada Abhidharma. And that difference is that when we differentiate, so we believe that the object of differentiation is really there, and the subject of differentiation is also really there. And so we have the impression that this differentiation is something objective. Surely it is objective, but it is objective because we have arranged our mind in a certain way. So when we study Sarvastivada Abhidharma, it means the reality is based on mind which arises and passes away moment by moment. When we study Theravada, we have the chitta vittis. We have the chitta vittis when the mind is based on I, on the five senses. And we have chitta vittis when the mind is not based on five senses, is based on mind itself, on a differentiating mind itself. So then you will also see accordingly how you differentiate your object. It does not mean that one differentiation is correct, the other differentiation is not correct. The Theravada had many realized people, the Sarvastivada also had many realized monks. But once you open your mouth, you work with the concepts. And the concepts, they already make the reality as something which is really there, which really exists. Now, you want to understand the real nature of reality, which is non-dualistic, then you have to learn to think not based on the concept. So the concepts, they come from the mind. If there is not six consciousness, so there are no concepts. If there is no this concept, they are based on the dualistic mind. And we live with a dualistic mind. But this dualistic mind, this is very important to understand. Whatever exists, whatever arises, exists in, this is Buddhist teaching, cannot arise by itself. It cannot arise through other, cannot arise through itself, and other cannot arise without causes. It can only arise in relation to something else. And to arise in relation to something else means, in a non-dualistic system, means not really to arise. It means arise like in a dream. So when we wake up from the dream, we know that it was a dream. When we are in the dream, we don't know that we are in the dream. Usually, unless you practice this dream yoga and so on. Normally, when we dream, we don't know we are in the dream. So this world, according to non-dualistic understanding, is the same like a dream. We are in a dream, but we only understand that this world is a dream, is our construction based on concepts, when we awaken from the dream. And awakening from the dream is based in this non-dualistic system, especially in our scripture, is based on non-thinking. Last time I have explained that in Chinese tradition, non-thinking means the non-wunyan or punyan means also not remembering. When we think, we actually think in images. And these images in Buddhist tradition, especially in the Abhidharma tradition, they are concepts. What we think about, the cars, money, tables, cups, coffee, and so on, all these are actually concepts. And our fellow beings, they don't see the same things. This is the justification of the non-dualistic systems. Every type of creature has his own thinking. We are humans, but still, even among ourselves, we all attracted to different images. But as far as Buddhism is concerned, what we attracted to, what we don't like, are the images, not the reality. It is reality for us, but for our fellow beings, dogs, cats, deer, some foxes here also, they have a very different idea of reality. This is a problem the Taoists, especially the Zhuangzi, they could penetrate very well. The objective thinking is very, very different from all kinds of creations. And what is objective for us are usually just our concepts, not the true reality, which must be non-dualistic. Why it must be non-dualistic? Because everything arises in relation, and what arises in relation by causes and conditions does not really arise, because whatever arises is a process, and in a process nothing can stand. Well, existing in Indian philosophy, also for the Greeks, means something which stands, which does not change. That which changes, it's there, but it is only there, can be only there in relation to something which is not subjected to the change, then the change is only related to something which is not changing, that we have talked about. And that which is not changing in the non-dualistic understanding, that precisely is the suchness. But the suchness is not opposed to that which arises. The suchness is always complementary to that which arises. So we are in non-dualistic sphere of thinking. This is very important. So it does not mean that thinking is not important, differentiation is not important, that if we do not differentiate, we cannot live. If we do not differentiate a person, a good person, a bad person, then the Vinaya or discipline has no, and ethics have no any meaning. So, in order to understand Buddhism, same in Theravada, same in the non-dualistic systems, we have to understand two truths: the relative truth and the highest truth. They don't say the ultimate truth, because the highest truth still lives in the relative. It is not something separated from the relative. So the nirvana is different from samsara, but it cannot be separated from samsara because it is related to the 5 aggregates, and without 5 aggregates, there cannot be any nirvana. So we get into non-dualistic way of thinking, and this is the essence. How to get there is the essence of what our scripture is teaching. This non-dualistic reality was always there. That's why the process of becoming realized is the called shijie, beginning. Beginning means no beginning. And learning meditation means going back to beginning, which is no beginning. So we work with the paradoxes, and our life and is a paradox, and realization is penetrating the nature of the paradox. We cannot live without contradictions, but we can understand that these contradictions, they belong to our relative reality. They don't belong to the highest reality, which in this system must be non-dualistic. Otherwise, it does not make sense. So this idea you have also in Theravada. When you attain nirvana, then the death cannot see you. Death cannot reach you. This is many, many verses in Dhammapada explain this in Sutta Nipata. This is the original teaching of the Buddha, common to all traditions. The Nagarjuna, in his treatise of the Middle Way, does not quote any Mahayana scriptures. He quotes what is considered to be Theravada scriptures, the Sutta Nipata, which says precisely that the reality makes sense because it is empty, empty of the self. And this emptiness of the self is common to nirvana, common to the samsara, common to the subject, common to the object. This is what we need to realize in order to attain the complete realization. So in the non-dualistic tradition, very important is the Lotus Sutra, which teaches the state of individual realization, state of the Arahat, as kind of preliminary stage to the complete realization, which necessarily, logically, must be non-dualistic, because it is the truth. It is the truth of the what we actually experience. Logically, it must be so. Nagarjuna's logic is called the diamond logic, because logically it must be so. If it is not so, it does not make sense. So the real arising in terms of the dependent origination does not make any sense. And everything arises from the mind, whose nature is not dualistic, but is non-dualistic. The dualistic experience comes from the mind itself. So this is why we have to go to the root of our experience. And the root of our experience, as explained in the scripture very nicely, the root of our experience is, so to say, rootless. To go to the beginning is to go to no beginning. That's why Shejie. When we practice meditation, we go back to the beginning in the sense of step by step realizing the no beginning, the no beginning dimension, the endless dimension, the limitless dimension, which is actually the nature of our mind. But it is a nature of our mind. Which mind? The mind which does not think. It does not mean that the mind which does not think is the true reality. The mind which does not think is, we have seen in our scripture, is the alaya, is a mind which dwells in the world. In Theravada, it is called bhavanga, the cause of existence. Bhava means existence, and anga we can translate as a cause. Existence, as everything else, must have a cause, and this cause is bhavanga. And bhavanga is, like alaya, is a mind which dwells in the world. But the nature of the mind is not dwelling in the world. The nature of the mind does not dwell anywhere. That's why in Dhammapada, the Arahat and the Buddha, they are not yet differences between Arahat and the Buddha in early Buddhism. The Arahat, he is also called no abode. Anoka. Oka means house. Anoka, no house. When we become Buddha, when we become an Arahat, we have no house to dwell. So we are here, but we have no house to dwell. And when we have no house to dwell, then when we die, we have no conditioning for the next existence. The conditioning for next existence is dwelling. The mind dwells in the world. And which mind dwells in the world, we will learn. And if not today, then the next lesson. It is a karmic mind. From this karmic mind comes our experience in the world, which is experience of duality. This screen I am looking at is not me. For sure, if it was me, the big problem, but it is also not different from me. If it was different from me, or if it was me, I would not be able to see it. But yet I see it because it is not me, and it is also not different from me. And this is the nature of our experience. Neither this nor that. Neither that side nor this side. Everything appears in relation to the other. And this is the nature of our experience. And this we can only understand when we understand the alaya, the mind which dwells in the world. And in this system that we are learning, which belongs to the philosophy of Tathagata Garbha, of the natural Buddhahood, being the true nature of the mind, from which all the phenomena arise, as we have learned. Without this background of the nature of the mind, nothing can arise. So what arises is mirrored in the mind, and these pictures in the mirror are not same as a mirror, but are also not different from the mirror. This is our experience. This is our experience when we get insight. Now, because our insight is weak, we still don't see this very clearly. But we meditate not because we wish for annihilation. That does not make sense. Nirvana is not annihilation. Nobody meditates for annihilation. We meditate because we want to realize the real beginning. That's why Shijie is based on Panjie, which is the, if there was not Panjie, so there would not be a process of awakening. So process of awakening, we have learned, is the same as the original awakening. And process of awakening is coming back to the beginning. But actually, we are not separated from the beginning when we do not think. We are separated from the beginning when we start thinking. It does not mean it would be a great mistake to think that we can get realization by not thinking. We definitely have to think, but when we meditate and get some deep experience in meditation, then we cling less and less to thinking. And that is a freedom from meditation. So everything is determined, but the freedom is not determined. Freedom which comes from this beginning, the mind without beginning and without the end. That mind is free. That mind is freedom. That mind which thinks is, of course, determined. is determined by our karmic mind, which is responsible for our dualistic understanding of our reality. We cannot, so to say, be freed from karmic mind by suppressing thinking, but we can get freedom by not clinging to thinking. That is why understanding this alaya, understanding this cause of our existence is so important. And when we start thinking, we are already, so to say, in a dualistic mind. This is a paradox. But this dualistic mind is in fact neither really existent nor non-existent, and this is the true state of things. In order to understand this true state of things, according to our scripture, we have to start from the end. The end is the state of the Prithagjana. Prithagjana means separate being. We are, as creatures in this world, we think that we are something separate. And because we think we are something separate from the true reality, which for the Buddhists is nirvana, that's why we identify so much with our ignorance, with our greed, with our hate, and we act, whether we aware of it or not aware of it, we act based on our liking and disliking. This is the state of the common man, always acting on the base of our liking and disliking, and this liking and disliking is based on our karmic mind, based on our concepts, which are different, which are common, that is a common karma, and which are also different according to individual. So, according to the scripture, when we start meditating, we take this self as separate from others, as separate from the true reality, as something being real. This is a state of common man. And our morality, generally, no matter what kind of morality, is based on these premises that this individual really exists and that we are either good or we are bad according to the measures the society accepts. And so if we want to be good, we have to learn to think in a positive way. And to think in a positive way is to stop the thinking which is harmful for us and harmful for others. The high morality is based on this. A good man does not harm others, but also should not harm himself. So in this alaya we have seen, we have the aspect of enlightenment and we have the aspect of non-enlightenment. We have learned that. This aspect of enlightenment is called the mind as suchness. And the aspect of non-enlightenment is called the mind appearing and passing away. Shenmie. Shenmie in Chinese is a synonym of samsara. So we can say samsaric mind as opposed to the mind as a suchness. So this is where we dwell. On one side, we dwell in the enlightened mind, which just reflects reality like a mirror. And we live also in a mind which clings to our differentiation. And that's why this differentiation is called Wang Nian. It is called the illusionary thinking. So there is a reality of suchness and a reality of illusionary thinking. So whenever we think of a real subject and object, we are in a way already engaged in illusionary thinking. And when we engage in illusionary thinking, we think that there is a real subject and a real object. This is most of the time, we cannot avoid this. So, according to this system, and this is very interesting, this is quite different from the Asanga Vasubandhu system of Chittamatrata, which Xuanzang has brought to China. In this system, which we have explained here, based on the dependent origination or dependent coordination based on the Buddha nature, based on Tathagata Garbha. In this system, the mind, which is suchness, perfumes, the mind itself has no any real nature. It is perfumed either by suchness, so it turns to good. Remember the teaching of Diamond Sutra, or the real virtues. We will come to it again in our scripture many times. All true virtues belong to true reality, not to individual, because individual in all its forms is an illusionary entity. So all the virtues belong to the suchness, which has no limits. The individual has limits, but the suchness in this system permeates, perfumes the illusionary mind, and again, illusionary mind perfumes the suchness. We will come to it later in this scripture, but in order to make sense to what we are learning now, the process of awakening, it is important to understand. In a Asanga system, the mind as suchness cannot actually do anything. But here it is described a very active role. It permeates the illusionary mind, and if illusionary mind is clung to, then it permeates again the suchness. So we are, so to say, being in Alaya, we are sitting on 2 chairs. We are on the chair of reality, which is the reality of the true mind, which is suchness, and we are on the chair of this mind created by duality, which clings to thinking and which takes the thinking as something which is real, which is ourselves, which is a base for the idea of the self. Without thinking, we cannot have a real idea of some existing self. This idea of existing self comes from thinking. This is very important. But the reality is always something which is neither this nor that. It has to be, this is a teaching of this system of meditation. It has to be, as Zen emphasizes, it has to be true reality, has to be object of direct intuition. This direct intuition is also called jie. This jie means a body, and body means the direct intuition into the things as they really are. Kai wu. Now, we start learning bodhi by permeating, I'm jumping forward, but it will be useful for understanding, by permeating the our reality with the goodness, and the real goodness, as explained in Mahayana scripture, does not belong to individual, it belongs to true reality. So we stop. In Chinese, stopping means also shamatha. Zhi means to stop and means to appease, the same word. When we stop, we appease. When we appease, we stop. So when the evil thoughts arise in our mind, which cause the defilements, which cause us to identify with our grasping to existence, grasping to non-existence, grasping to sensuality. It does not mean that these things are bad by themselves. They are bad when we grasp at them. So there is no good by itself, there is no bad by itself, but the good comes from non-grasping and the bad comes from grasping. But in the beginning, we believe that one who grasps and one who does not grasp is a real self. And because we stop thinking which is harmful, which causes harm, therefore, it is kind of a body, our scripture says, because we are practicing virtue which does not belong to any real individual. But it is not because we still believe that there is a real self which stops these harmful thoughts. So at this stage, we are what the Visuddhimagga, what Pali tradition calls the practice by contraries. Tat anga. Tat anga pahana, it's called in Pali. Tat anga pahana means on the base of ethical principles. When we have harmful thoughts, we do not cling to them. We try to abandon them by thinking something different. This is called Tat Anga Bhavana. Visuddhimagga explains Tat Anga Bhavana does not lead to abandoning of evil thoughts, but leads to the reduction of evil thoughts. Evil thoughts, their power will be reduced. So it is explained, we do not harm anyone by speech, we do not harm anyone by body, but we cannot really control evil thoughts arising, impossible. They will be there, but they will not lead to bad karmic deeds by speech and by body, like killing or stealing, and so on. Like the illicit sexual practices and so on. So this is enlightenment in the sense that we are attuned, our mind is attuned to suchness, which imbues the mind with good. But it is not really enlightenment, non-enlightenment, because at this stage we still believe that there is a real I, real soul, real self-principle, which is behind all this thinking and all this doing. So it is called in our scripture, where I don't read now from the text, I explain by myself, maybe it will be more clear. So the text, our friend Augusto said that it's easily available. He can send it to you, to those who are interested. Now I explain directly from my memory. Maybe next time I again come back to the text. So the next stage, which is very important, next stage on the trip of meditation, which is a trip to coming back to the beginning. And beginning is actually the end. Because the beginning has no beginning and no beginning has also no end. Again, we're working with the paradoxes, the real spirituality, real spiritual realized people, they work with paradoxes. This is common to all religious traditions. Also, the Sufis do that. Also, the Christian mystics do that. Also, the Buddhists do that. That is not special because we cannot rely on the worldly logic to present that which is beyond thinking. Well, whether you call it nirvana or you call it God, that is something which can be thought, but in itself it is beyond thinking. Why? Because it is as it is. So it is in a way a paradox. Now the next stage, our scripture explains, is the Xiang Si Jue. Xiang Si means similar to Jue, similar to body, but not really a body, seemingly a body. Maybe the best translation from Xiang Si would be seemingly a body. It seems to be body, but it is not real body. So, according to the scripture, it is, in order to understand it, we have to go from, as I have said, from end to the beginning. The end of the mental process and the end of every process is based on the beginning, on continuity, on disappearing or impermanence, and end. There cannot be end without beginning. When there is beginning, it has some continuity. It stands, Ju. When it stands, when its energy is exhausted, then it is subjected to cessation. When it ceases, end. So all processes, same in Theravada, same in Sanskrit tradition, Pali tradition, have actually 4 stages. The arising, it is compared in Abhidhamma to throwing a stone to the sky. You throw the stone to the sky, so it will remain in the air as long as it has the energy. When its energy is exhausted, it will stand or not stand. Discussion among scholars and yogis. If there is this stage of standing in the air, or if it immediately falls down. But when its energy is exhausted, it starts falling down. So this is impermanence. And when it falls down, then it is cessation. So we have 4 stages which characterize everything that is a process. And what we experience is only a process. It cannot be something that we experience with the senses. One of the senses is mind also. We cannot experience anything except in terms of a process. This is very important to understand. Then the dependent origination makes sense. Please investigate with yourself. When you think of something, it is a process. The image arises, image stands, then image disappears, and the end of one image and beginning of another image. So this is how the content of our experience is like that. So what is a seeming realization? Seeming realization in our scripture belongs to those who practice the so-called Mahayana scriptures called the lower vehicle, the vehicle of the Shravaka, of the listener, of the disciple, and the vehicle of the Buddha for himself, they believe in individual realization. They want to attain individual realization so that they are not subjected to mental suffering anymore. When we attain individual realization, we are not subjected to the mental suffering anymore. We have bodily suffering, this is unavoidable, but no more mental suffering. Mental suffering is caused by this ignorance, greed, and by hate or anger. And all the negative mental factors which make give the content to the mind, they connect it with them. Now, we have to know dependent origination starts with ignorance, but ignorance is not beginning. Ignorance is also the causality. And what is the cause of ignorance? The asavas, low fa. That means inflow and outflow of impurities into the mind. And what is the cause of inflow and outflow of impurities into the mind? Again, we come to this three axes of samsara: greed, hate, and ignorance. So again, turning without beginning. And in this system also without the end, because everything we experience is a process. But we cannot remove this process, we cannot remove the world, we cannot remove the ignorance, but we can penetrate the ignorance. This is the non-dualistic teaching. Rather than removing the ignorance, penetrate the ignorance. So we do not abandon the world, but we also do not cling to the world. This is the idea of the non-dualistic practice. Give rise to the mind, but do not let the mind cling anywhere, because it is a true nature of the mind not to cling anywhere. So if we believe in individual realization, and even the bodhisattva who is not yet realized, he still believes that he is practicing the bodhisattva path, that he is practicing something special in this way, that he is also something special, that he is a real bodhisattva. So a bodhisattva in the beginning stage of the practice, that means before the realization, at the stage of faith. This treatise is called the Awakening of Faith in Mahayana. We start with a faith rather than with a differentiating thought. But without differentiating thought, we also cannot have a true faith. But when we practice with the idea of being something special, even a bodhisattva, and we attain something special. So we can only attain the seeming realization. It is not yet true realization. Why? Because it is still based on differentiation. Even the realization based on differentiation it is a seeming realization. It is not the true realization. So we start from the end, and we come to the stage before the end. The one who is the ordinary being, he contemplates the end. He does not let the evil thoughts continue, so he contemplates the end of the evil thoughts. Now, the one who wants to attain his realization, even if it is for the sake of all beings, but he still works on differentiation, not on realization, even though it be a good differentiation, correct differentiation, it is still differentiation. So realization based on differentiation is a seeming realization. So the seeming realization contemplates the impermanence, the last, but one before the last stage, which was the stage of cessation. He contemplates the impermanence, but his idea is of something permanent, nirvana, realization, as different from the impermanent. Again, the paradox. Paradox is a wonderful thing because all we really realize is the in terms of relations. So based on correct differentiation in this system, we can only attain the seeming realization, but the seeming realization is still based on differentiation. And through the seeming realization, we are still contemplating as that which is impermanent as opposed to that which is permanent. So the one who practices the Vipassana based on correct differentiation, he practices the insight into the impermanence as opposed to that which is not subjected to impermanence. So his realization is a seeming realization, but not a true realization. This is also teaching of the Lotus Sutra and of many other Mahayana sutras. Also, you will find it in the Lankavatara Sutra, which is the base for the Zen teaching as brought by Dhammo to China. So it is a realization indeed, but it is not a complete realization. In the Lotus Sutra, it is the, so to say, preliminary stage to realization. And this preliminary stage to realization is not yet a complete realization. That means that Arahat, he still is not a Dharmakaya, he is not a suchness, he still has his habitual energies. And they are, according to Asanga and according to other scriptures, according to Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra and so on, according to Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, there are two kinds of arahats. The definite arahat who has no interest for the complete realization, he only cares about his own individual realization. Then there is the arahat who is not definite, Puting Lohan, who seeing the suffering of the world and so on gives rise to compassion. So he can, because he already contemplates something which stands, he has already realization, then he can turn to a bodhisattva path and attain the supreme realization, go to the beginning of all processes, which is the true nature of the mind as we have seen. And in this sense, it is one mind in our scripture. One mind being the mind of all sentient beings, being the mind as suchness. So as long as one separates one's realization from the nature of the mind, in this system, it is a seeming realization, but it is not the, cannot be the ultimate realization. And this seeming realization will detach completely the person from wrong differentiation. He is free from wrong differentiation, but he still holds to correct differentiation. So he holds to the mind based on differentiation. But it is already a very wonderful state. And indeed, very admirable. But it is still seeming in this system based on mind as the nature of Buddhahood. It is still a seeming realization. The next stage is the bodhisattva realization. When a bodhisattva realizes the first stage, and from the first stage until the 10th stage or 11th stage, depend on system, he is, so to say, he realized Sui Fan Jue. Sui Fan Jue means partial realization. He has not yet ultimate realization, but his realization is already non-dualistic. So it is based on not on correct differentiation. It is based on that which surpasses all differentiation. This realization is indeed much more difficult than the individual realization. Nowadays, we all, many of us, we want to practice a bodhisattva path. We give rise to the vows of the bodhisattva. We try to realize these vows of the bodhisattvas, but we all do it by motivation, correct motivation, we believe, and by some preliminary insight based on correct differentiation. But we have not yet realized the non-dualistic mind. We still think in terms of the concepts, and these concepts are indeed very useful. So that's why the first stage of the bodhisattva realization is called pramudita. Pramudita, the Chinese, they translate she, but she is a very troublesome word in Chinese. It translates so many things. It translates joy, it translates joy as the one of the Brahma Viharas, as it translates also priti, rejoicing, kind of contentment, the mental joy, and so on, many, many different factors. Here it translates this kind of joy, deep rejoicing at attaining something which is unattainable. This is the philosophy of the great wisdom. Because the bodhisattva does not attain anything, he attains the supreme enlightenment. This is a hard sutra also, which we try to memorize and repeat every day. At least I try. When we go practice Zen, then we always, every day, we repeat many, many times. So the non-attainment Buddha is the, but the what? The supreme enlightenment, Wushang Bodhi. Wuswata Kuta Anu Tolo Samyak Sambodhi. So this attainment, most of us trying to practice the bodhisattva path, we actually, even great meditators, they are still working with the dualistic mind. What to do? To work with a non-dualistic mind is very, very difficult. In our time, maybe Xu Yin Lao Heshan, he was a true bodhisattva, always remaining in samadhi, never shaken from his non-dualistic samadhi, yet very active in the world and helping so many people. This is indeed a very great attainment and joy beyond description. That's why this first stage is called joyful, and it is connected with the practice of giving up dana parami. Then in the next stages, one perfects oneself in all the other 9 paramis. This is a system of 10 paramis, the 10 bhumis. All these bhumis, they are still a partial realization. They are not yet the Jujin Jue. We have learned the 4 kinds of Jue, Pen Jue, Shi Jue, Jujin Jue. The Jujin Jue is coming to the beginning. And the one who realizes the partial enlightenment, which is a non-dualistic enlightenment, he realizes partial enlightenment in the sense that he has gone beyond all differentiations. He has no more clinging on differentiation whatsoever. This is indeed the most wonderful stage. He lives in differentiations, but he is free from differentiations. So this is undescribable. One has to realize it by oneself. But as we perfect our practice, we may have some inclinations, some spontaneous understanding of this, which is also called kaiwo, satori. But it will not last. When we attain this stage of partial realization, it will last. And because it will last, this impermanence ceases to be real. Differentiation are all based on impermanence. So the one who is such a partial bodhisattva, he stays with his mind in the true reality, which is beyond differentiation. And these differentiations, he uses them without clinging to help others to go beyond suffering. So this is being in differentiations while not clinging to them whatsoever, and practicing perfections to attain the beginning. And the beginning is indeed the mind as suchness. This mind as suchness is beginning which has no beginning. And that which has no beginning has also no end. So when we progress in our meditation, we can have some inkling into this mind. When we realize this mind, then we can no more clinging to any differentiations, but using the differentiations to help others without clinging. This is then the true bodhisattva. Then his mind rests in non-duality. That's why it's called Ju. Contemplating Ju, contemplating, resting, staying staying in reality as it is, and contemplating that which arises and passes away as being like a dream based on Xu Wang Fen Pie, the illusionary differentiations. So this gives to one's behavior a great freedom, yet this freedom is used for attaining more and more insight into this reality as suchness. Now we come to the final stage, which is beginning stage. Beginning stage is a final stage, and final stage is a beginning stage. And that is the state of the perfectly realized Buddha. The perfectly realized Buddha attains the beginning, which is no beginning. Attained the nirvana, which is the not the small nirvana, but the great nirvana. This great nirvana is, as we have seen, it is the realization of the one mind, which is the realization of the Dharma. Dharma is that which measures us, which holds us, yet which has no abode as such. That which has no abode has no beginning, and that which has no beginning, that contemplates the beginning as not real. Staying in this state is the ultimate realization. So the ultimate realization is paradoxically the non-realization, the attaining that which cannot be attained. And that is a natural state. In this tradition, it is a natural state of all beings. That is the mind which rests in the true reality, which is called suchness. And the Buddha is the one who comes in suchness and goes in suchness. That's why he's called Tathagata. He comes in suchness, Tatha Agata, and he goes in suchness, Tatha Gata. And this going and coming in suchness is no coming, no going. It is neither one, not many. It is neither erosion, not ceased. It is neither annihilation nor permanence. So, however you grasp it, you cannot hold it. And because you cannot hold it, it is a true reality. And if you could hold it, then it would have some beginning. But it has no beginning because again, paradox, because it has come to the beginning, which is no beginning. So this is the deep understanding of the practice, which comes from our condition, from the end, and goes, which is still believing that we are something, and goes stage by stage. Here 4 stages, but we can also find other stages, but 4 stages makes sense. So in 4 stages, we come back to what we really are, to our natural state. Now, especially if you study Zen, actually, we first thing we learn, if we are connected with a good teacher, is that we don't know what is natural. Because we don't know what is natural, we have no peace in mind. This is, according to this system, it is the deepest interpretation of what the Buddha has realized under the Bodhi tree of the dependent realization. Whatever is dependent, whatever arises by causes and conditions, it cannot really arise and it cannot really cease. In a way, all Buddhist teachings, in my non-enlightened view, all Buddhist teachings necessarily connect in one way or another to this essential truth. The nirvana, because it has never arisen, it was never compounded, it was never fabricated. So it is a natural state. And the natural state is a natural state because it is true, because you cannot grasp it. If you grasp it, it becomes unnatural, because grasping in Buddhism is the cause of existence. Of which existence? Of a sorrowful existence. So it makes sense for sure. Yet, I have jumped a little bit forward, yet this teaching that the true reality, which is suchness, permeates our reality, which arises and passes away through our thinking, they are always interrelated. Our reality, which is arises and passes away, can only make sense related to that reality, which is suchness, which does not arise and pass away. So this is different from the teaching of the Asanga. They always together. They cannot be separated, otherwise the ultimate sense is not clear. Okay, so we have surpassed our time. I hope we have learned a little bit with my ignorance. I have tried my best. And now we have learned the process of meditation from the end to the beginning. Now the author will slowly lead us through, in a very intelligent way, to the process from the beginning to the end, which is our state of clinging to our karmic consciousness, and due to that, experiencing all kinds of unpleasant situations in life. So that's it. Now let us keep the questions for next time, or are there any urgent questions to discuss? I'm not in hurry, but maybe if there are not urgent questions, we keep them for next time. Okay?